Everybody, we've been looking at Europe and things happening there, kind of how the Dark Ages going on in Europe uh, post Rome, about year 1000. Let's then look now and see how other parts of the world are doing a lot better than Europe was. We're focused on the Middle East today. We were studying them right before break, um, right before the semester. So we're kind of come back to them a little bit and just see what's happening in the Middle East versus what's going on in Europe. Big prep for our activity. So one of the biggest things we see in the area of learning in the Middle East is the idea of something called the House of Wisdom, done by the Umayyad dynasty, by a caliph named Harun al-Rashid, who was said, there's a value in learning and a value in getting smarter. And so based in the city of Baghdad, they made this big building. It was essentially called the House of Worship, a place for philosophers and artists and thinkers and scientists and astronomers to all get together, think, meet, learn, study, and try to find new ideas about the world and how the world works. Everything from astronomy and mapping the stars to medicine, looking at germs and how diseases operate. All those kind of things were studied and looked at the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, and it was a really big place for it to happen. And a lot of discoveries come out of the House of Wisdom. And some of the things we see is the idea of architecture that really changes in the Middle East. The biggest buildings in the Middle East were obviously the mosques, the houses of worship. We looked at the Hagia Sophia built by the Byzantines last week, and here's an example of something called the Blue Mosque. And so this you kind of see how mosques use different architectural elements from the Romans, the idea of arches, the idea of domes, columns, all very, very popular. You also see the idea of using light and dark stone. Obviously, within Islam, you can't use actual like pictures and paintings to decorate. So instead, you have the idea of how to use architectural features, color, patterns, inscriptions as a way to decorate and beautify different objects. You'll see a very common feature in Muslim architecture called a minaret. This is a minaret right here. This is where the muezzin, that person who would do the call to prayer, would stand and do the call to prayer from. Nowadays, obviously, they do it from inside using loudspeakers, but this is kind of that old way of doing the call to prayer. To elevate yourself high up to do the worship. Even looking at social class, think about Europe, how Europe had, your high kings, your nobles, a lot of people were farmers after that. Here we see a lot different occupations to exist. Your high class, your caliphs being your leaders, religious and political leaders of the Arab dynasties. But you also have kind of middle class people, doctors, scientists, astronomers, and even your lower classes are still doing a lot better. You have some who are farmers, but you also have shopkeepers, traders, merchants, even the job of storyteller. They're actually professional storytellers at this time who literally would sit in the middle of the markets, bazaars of the Middle East, and sit and tell stories and legends for people's entertainment. Huge ideas. Okay, trade was a big part of it too. Looking at where the Middle East is, right here from Iran to Saudi Arabia to Turkey, right here. Notice all the different trade areas cross paths. Okay, you have the trade from Europe coming in from the trade of Asia, the trade of Africa. Essentially, they're crossroads of the world. And being at crossroads of the world, all these different goods and ideas will switch back and forth. I mean, you look at the idea of gold and salt coming from Africa to the Middle East, silk, porcelain, tea coming from Asia, things going to Europe, all back and forth. As those goods and materials flow back and forth, you have the idea of the ideas as well, the sciences, the inventions, the technology that travel and people learn about during this time. Obviously, trade happens a lot of different ways. You have the desert caravans using camels. Isn't that cute camel up there? Yes, he is. Or she, whatever. Anyway, a lot of camels that you can use for caravans back and forth across the desert. A lot of the trade was done by sea as well, with the Middle East being all different little peninsulas. We see how the Chinese dhows, Chinese junks, ships would go from Africa to the Middle East, to India, to Asia, using the monsoon winds to propel their ships, and they could transport goods back and forth. There was still some overland trade happening, going all the way from Marco Polo's going to Asia, but there was a lot of trade happening via sea as well. A lot of this trading happened in the bazaars. The bazaar basically being the city shopping center. Here's a modern day picture of the bazaars in the Middle East, where you can find anything. You have hundreds of little stands and shops, all full of people, all selling various goods and those kind of things. Different merchandise from all over the world, traders will be selling to get as much as they could or trade for other goods. Today the bazaars are really cool. You can find almost anything you want in the bazaars of the Middle East. I know my buddy who was served over in Kuwait, he went to the bazaar markets in Kuwait City, and he found all this cool stuff he brought back with him from overseas. Little things like coins and gold and everything from football jerseys to gold coins to statues and statues and artwork. You found anything you want to find at the bazaars from all over the world. Now looking at a few of the sciencey and technology kind of things that are going on here. One here is the idea of the astrolabe. This is a little device used by astronomers to chart the stars, chart when the horizon falls, all those different kind of things used to look at to map the stars and make star charts. A lot of times it's really important for sailors and travelers. Think about you're on the ocean, think about you're in the desert. There aren't a lot of landmarks to go up. You can't say, third tree to the right. Instead, you have, all water, all sand. And so the way to use the stars to chart your navigation as you're moving. And you actually go and kind of map out where the stars are. We see the Arab groups being the first ones to be able to map the stars, chart everything out, and be able to figure out where they're going using the stars for navigation. You see other kind of sciencey people, different thinkers. Ibn Rushd, also Averroes in Greek, was a great thinker. Took advantage of a big, huge library in Spain. Spain at this time was a Muslim area yet, and he wrote and read about a lot of different ideas, everything from Plato to Aristotle. And he wrote about medicine and physics, those kind of things. He had early theories about germ theory, figure out how diseases move back and forth to each other. He looked at how planets move, the idea of spheres, how spheres move, and how a planet might be moving, those kind of things. All ideas that didn't come to Europe until much, much later. Ibn Sina, very, very famous doctor, especially. He was actually a personal doctor for some of the Muslim caliphs. And he was 18 years old, became a doctor. He literally memorized entire books. Really, really good at it. He's one of the first guys to figure out that when people were sick together, they caught disease, and there's some way, whether it be through air or some of that disease is moved. And so you get the idea of kind of starting to quarantine people who are sick away from other sick people, the healthy people, and that way it stops spreading diseases. It sounds really simple, really, duh, but at the time it was really kind of a big idea. He also looked at some theories of movement and motion and momentum, some early physics theories that were put together, and how things move in relation to each other. Ibn Khaldun was also another of these great thinkers, an orphan, lost his parents to plague. He was one of the first ever sociologists and economists. He was a guy who watched people, studied people, and how they moved and didn't move. He looked at people who live in cities versus nomadic people who were Berbers living in North Africa, and how their lives and their culture was a lot different because if they were moving people, were nomadic people versus sedentary. And kind of one of the first people to kind of chart social behavior and how people act in regards to each other and look at some of the social norms and ideas that exist there. Also, in the economy, looked at how scarce goods had value and they needed inflation, and kind of started charting out that hey, if we change the amount of gold or silver in the dinar, the kind of money they use in their empire, that's going to change the value. And so looking at how scarce goods have value to, which is a big idea in terms of economics that we'll see impact the world for a long, long time. So obviously, there's just a few little intros here to this. We're doing a little mini project with this in class on Wednesday and Thursday, so I'll be ready for that, and I will talk to you guys then.